The Buzz
We're
with
back
Jess
to Main Studio
Lujan.
guest, the Governor of Guam, Eddie Baza. Calvo, Governor, again, it's always good to have you in the studio. Let's jump to tax refunds. There was recently a bill that was introduced, supported by the administration, in regards to a bond component. Again, this is nothing new. It goes back to your first administration when you wanted to pay the people back and you wanted some reserves and all this, and you were given half a loaf, and that half a loaf was pretty darn good, pretty darn good. And a debt is a debt, right? And it cannot be I mean, you know, I'm still owed. I'm not going to forgive the government for that. I still want my money, and hopefully, you know, that will be cleared down the line. But people are owed either their change or their overpayment and things of that nature. And so there's a component out there that supports a $100 million bond component.
Yeah. First, I want to thank Senator McCready, and he's backed by Senator Tony Adams. I think most of the Republicans, and I also believe some Democrats that want to see the fulfillment of the original plan. You know, we had for years before for taxpayers and those who were expecting a refund would wait 4, 5, even sometimes more than 5 years for their tax refund. The original plan was that we would float a bond to pay for the prior year tax refunds, but also to fund the reserve account, which in budget laws, you know that, the reserve account should be put, the monies that are collected are for the next round of tax filers coming up the next distribution. And that was a plan that we presented to the legislature. Unfortunately, the leadership of the legislature, the Democratic leadership, had other plans for it, and so the bill that was enacted into law got us to the 90-yard line, but didn't get us through to the touchdown. And with that, now I want to thank Senator McCready, because what he is doing is now fulfilling the plan that we had originally sent to the legislature. We shouldn't have had to wait 5 years to this point, but I want to thank him for it, and I look forward to moving this forward.
Let me ask you, because on the last segment, of course, we talked about the hybrid plan of again, the retirement fund, right? And you are very concerned that our bond rating is going to take a hit. Now, because that bill was already was overwritten, your veto was overwritten. Now, I don't know when those bond folks are going to say, well, you know what? When the report comes out, hide the report before we go to the bond market at this point, because if that report comes out, and the bond holders and the bond people who like, again, look at our status here, that might, again, downgrade our standings.
Well, whether I float this bond or not, there's a high likelihood going to be a downgrade, and it has everything to do with the hybrid law. And that's why I find it ironic that the two champions of the hybrid law, Senator Cruz, Vice Speaker Cruz, and Senator Mike St-Nicholas, at one hand pretend to be the champions of fiscal responsibility, but then at the same time they passed a measure that has such far-ranging negative financial consequences to all the people of Guam, the taxpayers, the GovGuam workers, and retirees. So with that in mind, I understand that it has made the market a little bit more expensive for us when it comes to floating this bond out. But there's surety to it. With this bond, we do believe that we can get it at favorable interest rates. Probably, but it would have been less of an interest rate
if we did it at the very beginning.
If we didn't have, and we didn't have this hybrid law. But there's certain things that we can be very clear of. It'll have a fixed term at a fixed interest rate and a fixed payout period. We're going to know what our debt service is. As a matter of fact, right now we know, we paid, because it takes about 5 months to pay off our tax refunds. That's about $1 million to $1.5 million of interest that we're paying out to those that are receiving the refunds because of the delay in months. Well, the original plan was not to take months, but we wanted to. When you file, you get your tax refund within days, at the most weeks. With this calculation that we've made, and based on sound financial calculation, it'll probably be about annual debt service of about $3 million a year. So you look at the debt service, you look at the maturity, there's certainty in it, as opposed to the hybrid law championed by the Vice Speaker and by Senator Nicholas, where it's all based on assumptions, already in assumptions where we're already $250 million with additional liabilities and unfunded liabilities, and with guarantees that we have no idea whether we'll be to keep those guarantees.
Now, Governor, your critical...
This is sound financially. So I can't see the Democratic leadership, particularly Senator Nicholas and Vice Speaker Cruz, who fought so emotionally for this hybrid law that was so fiscally irresponsible that they would go against something that would get monies into the taxpayers' pockets within days.
Now, Governor,
unless they just have something against anything that comes out of my administration.
Critics say, well, Governor, you're going to put this in the backs of the children and their children's children because we're going to borrow. Correct me if I'm mistaken here, and I don't think I'm mistaken here, that when we owe tax refunds right now, we don't pay in the time there's interest incurred. Now, that's more expensive than going and get a cheaper rate, is it not?
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying that if you even go into our budget laws that are enacted, every dollar that is collected by the government of Guam, there's a certain percentage of that should go to the Income Tax Reserve Fund. It accumulates over the year until the next year when the filing occurs. When the filing occurs, there has to have this money that has been placed in this reserve account, actual liquidity, cash, that then is paid out in checks, should be immediately or within days to those that are filing. What they did to us, and again, unfortunately, they should have seen it, when you give us something that is half-baked, like what they did for us. So yeah, we paid for all 5 or 6 years of prior obligations, tax refunds, but you didn't get us to the point where we have a reserve fund that is fully funded. They're so concerned about the retirement fund, yet they're not concerned about funding the income tax reserve fund. Where am I going to take $100 million, take it out of our current cash collections to pay for the police department, the fire department, Department of Education, all our critical areas, and yet we also have to pay monies for tax refunds that are owed for this year. And then at the same time put a portion of it in a reserve fund. It doesn't make sense, and they know it. It's math. It's basic math. So I'm hopeful that when these folks go into session and we get this bill put on the floor, they can see the simple mathematics of it all, and stop playing this politics game. Focus on if you really passed a budget and you wanted a reserve fund fully funded, then give us the necessary resources. Unless they want me to cut $100 million in current spending again, and to fill that fund, which is what Mike Nicholas wanted to do in the first place, which would have caused catastrophe in the government of Guam. It'll help also. They've been so concerned. One moment they're telling me to use Section 30 money, then the next time around they're saying don't use Section 30 money for paying out tax refunds. Well, tell you what, if we fully fund the reserve fund, then we won't touch the Section 30 money.
Governor, real quick, I want to ask you about this because they're critical of you, of course, the deportations and all this. But we have a situation here, and I was reading somewhere where I think Senator Underwood was critical of you because of the H-2 situation, and they said you're only looking at the Filipinos as workers, and I'm going. We have a zero rate of folks coming here to make a living.
Boy, have you noticed she hasn't responded to me other than doing all these accusations? My wife is half Filipina.
So is my wife is full Filipino.
Yeah, my great-grandfather was born and raised in the Philippines, went to University of Santo Tomas, and moved back to Guam with his mother, who was Chamorro. But he was born and raised in the Philippines. We all have a Philippine connection. I saw Senator Underwood bring something up, it was all a political scenario about some supposed statement made by Donald Trump. In reality, that listing that he was pointing out certain nations, came from the Obama-Clinton administration list of states or nations that had organizations such as Abu Sayyaf. So she was playing politics with it. And now we have real human beings. We have men and women here, H2 and H1. Each one of them providing critical jobs, nurses, health practitioners at a hospital, construction workers that are building our schools, building our hotels, building our military bases. It's the Obama-Clinton administration that has done an about-face and is now canceling these visas. These folks are not only building Guam, and most of them are Filipinos and Filipinas. They're building our community. They're taking money in to better their lives and their families'
Helping them
lives.
build their country as well.
And for Senator Underwood to stay silent in this, it reminds me of that saying, you point one finger at one person, three fingers are pointing back. I would wish that Senator Underwood would do something and say something other than just make these personal attacks on me, because again, myself and Congresswoman Berdali, we've been fighting hard to try to keep these workers in Guam. And workers that are also parents and are husband and wives, and contributing to our community and contributing to their families in the Philippines.
Governor, I want to thank you again.
We need a change in leadership. We need Republican leadership there in the legislature. That'll solve a lot of problems.
Hey,
have you noticed there's been 5 or 6 years of governor?
Tomorrow's election.
And we've had tax refunds in the past. It took 6 years. Now they're taking months. We have new schools. We have new police cars, new fire cars, new fire trucks, new ambulances. Things are improving. And you know what? The Democratic leadership, and I'm talking about folks such as the Vice Speaker
and tomorrow's
the
election
Speaker
day.
and
Tomorrow's
Arissa,
election day.
They've been going against me since day one. So obviously, if we had followed their advice, can you imagine how little progress we would have made? Vote the Republican, please.
Governor, I want to say we don't have time to say goodbye because we're saying it right now. Again, get out and vote. Get out and vote tomorrow. Again, very important. Your vote is your voice. We're going to thank you again. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.